This is going to be the first video in a new series where I take this comic book, it's a short 6-page comic, and convert it into a low poly animated short. So I wanted to talk about animation basics first off, and I thought the best way to do that would be to show off like a walk cycle. And I'm going to start off by going into pose mode and hiding these bones because I don't really need them at the moment. And then in object mode, I'm going to hide these elements. So I'm going to match up my frames very basically. I'm just going to rough out the same angles for all of the limbs. All right, so now that I have kind of everything in the basic position I want, I'm going to select everything with A, hit I, and put in the rotation and the location as a keyframe. Let's talk about the timeline. So in Blender, there is a timeline, which is right here. It's got the clock symbol, and we can move across this timeline by clicking and moving our mouse, or we can play the timeline forward and backwards, pause it, get to the end, get to the beginning. All pretty basic stuff for like video editing and stuff like that. We have a start and an end, and when we get to the end, the player will loop back. So what's important to know for the timeline is it will only display keyframes for things that have keyframes and are selected. This has keyframes here because it moves. So it starts off in this position, and then we have a keyframe in this position, so it moves back between those two positions. And if we select our character, I don't actually move the character in this because this is just something that was put together, and the character doesn't actually move. They're moving in place. Each of our bones in pose mode have keyframes. So we can see for this one, these are all the keyframes, these are all the keyframes. And this is a summary, but we can also see more details. So if I select all of these bones, we can see all the keyframes. And we can use box select, and you can use circle select too, which just selects, I didn't actually know you could use that until just now actually. So yeah, you can use all the selections. A, select invert, control I always forget that one. So yeah, you can delete keyframes, and let's see, what else do you need to know for the timeline? I think that's about it for basic startup. The auto keyframing, auto keying. So to create these keyframes, we have to use the I key. We have to select something, hit the I key, or go up to here and insert keyframe. But and we can insert a keyframe for these different things. And usually it's going to be rotation or location. You can also animate scale. You can animate everything in Blender. You hover over a location, you can hit I. Like if I wanted to move the character, I could do that. I could just, then they would slide like that in between these two locations. And if I wanted to maybe do something else here, then they would go roop. So that's the timeline. Now you can use auto keyframing for this, but I don't really care for that when I'm starting off with an animation, because I want to keyframe every single bone. So selecting everything and hitting I just reminds me I need to do that, because then I'll have moved something and then later on I'll get messed up. So with auto keys, once you move something, it will create a keyframe for you, and it'll create it based off whatever you've done. So I can do all kinds of stuff here and move on the timeline and get different stuff going on. Yeah, you can use that though, it's right here. So we have this keyframe, and now if we move over, we'll get the general shape here of this next frame on frame 5. We're gonna skip 3, and we'll just let Blender fill in the gap there. And then I can hit I and click on available, which will use the rotation and location, because that was what was used in the last frame. So now we have this movement here. I'm gonna move this up. So we get that up movement kind of. And then let's move over 5 again. And let's just capture frame number 9. And we'll get the arms more opposite each other, but they'll be a little more like they're passing from one angle to the next, one extreme to the next. So up, select everything, and let's rotate the foot a little maybe. Okay, so skip over to the last frame here. We'll move over 5 again, just because we can move all this stuff around anyway. Oh, right. I don't know what I'm doing here. So frame 13 is actually just frame 1 flipped. So let's copy this and Control Shift X, or no, Control. One of these is, let's see. There's a flip paste, and I think it used to show it here what it was. But anyway, copy that, and then if you do Control V, you can paste it. And I'm flipping this because these names all are symmetrical, so it knows that it should flip the legs. So that looks okay. And since this is this frame here, we can take this frame and this frame, and we can also, maybe it's Control Shift V, I don't know. Flip these, so oops. And then what would happen is we would go back to the first frame, and if we want to make it loop here, I'm gonna move this over 5 again, and we'll set the length to 29 here. So what we end up with is it tweens, it like moves everything to be headed towards this frame here, but we've duplicated it here, because if we didn't have it, then it would just be stopping there. So it gives us a nice visualization of if we were to import this into a game engine or something, because you can usually change some settings for looping like that. All right, so that was our first pass. Now what can we do to kind of emphasize this animation? So I'm going to turn on auto keyframing now and kind of rotate the character just a little bit. Move. Smaller movements. We'll duplicate this one again since we changed it. And now let's take this. All right, let's rotate a little bit here. So now rotate the torso. Duplicate this one again. Oh. Select everything, duplicate this. There we go. All right, so also you can use arrow keys to jump between keyframes. My mouse has a little joystick I like to use to switch keyframes. Very useful. Now I want the legs to be more like this. So, oops. We'll do just a slight rotation here and here. And then let's see, where's the next time we do a stride is right here. Rotate a little bit. Oh, and if you don't want to accidentally select objects, you can make sure that this is on. So now I can only select bones while in pose mode. Still looks a little stiff. I do want to animate the hair, and my first thought is we do this. So we rotate it like that. And then we kind of make it more neutral. Oh. All right, so we can also I don't know if we want to rotate. Yeah, let's kind of get this a bit more like that. You kind of just have to eyeball the whole thing and see where you can make subtle changes. We have a bit of a secret weapon up our sleeve because we're trying to make this look a little more retro. And I will show that when we finish animating the clothes here. So going back into pose mode, I'm going to do Alt-H because I hid these. Let's just go through with keyframing on. Actually, I guess, yeah, we'll use keyframes. We'll see. So I'm going to have to position these bones. And just give this a little bit of a rotate. Okay. So now okay, so let's hide the bones. That looks okay. So another thing we can do here, and this is really a bit more of a style thing, because this animation it's going to be kind of retro, the whole thing. So if we go into pose mode again, we can somewhere bake action. Okay, yeah, so pose, animation, bake action. If you ever want to know where something is, you can use the search and it will tell you. So animation, bake action. And what this is going to do for all of the frames we have right now, instead of just the computer being like, hey, this is, instead of Blender being like, all right, this is going to move this much in between these frames, we just create new keyframes based off of that. So now we have these. What's the point of having that? So if we scale this, and this whole timeline scales based off where this is here, our point in the timeline. So if I go to 0 and scale 0.5 and then scale by 2, we now have keyframes every other frame. And now if I hit T and click on constant interpolation, oh yeah, I've got to select everything. Oh, forgot to select everything. Okay, now it's eliminated those frames. We've got half the amount of frames. We'll fix that real quick. All right, so now hit T and go for, select everything, hit T for constant. And now we only update on our keyframes, which gives us this kind of stop motion-y, like old school effect. And I kind of like it. This whole video just kind of ended up with me just doing stuff and saying things, and I hope it was somewhat useful. If there's any specific subjects that were covered here that need their own video, I can always make a video for that. And yeah, next time I'm gonna probably be showing some of the environment building and the animation process for actually animating the scenes in the comic. So anyway, that's it. Thanks for listening to my ramblings, and thank you.